Good evening. Also tonight, what's it like to be from Afghanistan and Pakistan and worrying about a war back home? We'll find out. But first, our top story. What a day on the Avalon Peninsula. Torrential rain, severe flooding, loss of power and phones, some schools were closed, and businesses were flooded out. Even Canada Post couldn't get through the wind and the rain. They gave up trying to deliver the mail. More rain fell on St. John's overnight than normally falls on the city in a full month. We have extensive coverage. First, here's Susan Pedler.
Nowhere was Gabrielle's strength more visible than in Quidi Vidi. The force of the water was so great, 2 boats sank, a shed washed out to sea, and the gut was filled with debris. People scrambled to save what they could. The big concern was this fishing stage, barely hanging on, despite attempts to anchor it with slabs of cement.
There was a piece of stuff like that, look, went down the river about an hour ago, tumbling end over end, floating almost down the river. It was unreal.
Gabrielle blew in late last night. By morning, it was clear she didn't leave much of the city untouched. The road to Shea Heights was completely washed out. Cars, stalled in deep water, were abandoned, and entire back gardens just disappeared. Every yard on this street looks the same, and people blame the local contractors.
The construction company actually had to go up and tear out concrete walls, which was restricting the water from going down the river, and consequently the water came down the street, and therefore and really rushing and went into all the properties.
Gabrielle brought so much water, storm sewers backed up. That meant flooded basements. The water in this basement is at least knee-deep, and the damages will go into the thousands of dollars.
I went down and took a long time to get the plug up because it was well up to my elbow in water. And anyway, as soon as I got the thing out, the water flushed up and started going out. It came up and almost came up into my face.
Some people were lucky enough to have pumps and hoses on hand, but for those who didn't, the lineups were long. Everything from generators to rubber boots, all flew off the shelves.
It started when we came into work at 20 to 8, and it was flat out then with shop backs.
And after a week of airport problems, planes were grounded again. There were long delays and some cancellations.
I've made 4 different sets of travel arrangements to get from here. I got in here on Thursday, and I've been trying to get out of here ever since. And today, of course, is the day that the hurricane has got to come along.
Now it's up to cleanup crews to get the city going again. Right now, that means moving water from one spot to the next and hoping there isn't more to come.
Well, Susan Pedler is standing by live now. Susan, just how bad was the storm?
Well, Debbie, the storm hit all of southeastern Newfoundland. The Avalon, the Burin, the Bonavista Peninsulas were all hit. Winds gusted up to 90 kilometers an hour or more. And the rain, there was so much rain. 118 millimeters in St. John's, and at Cape Race, a whopping 161 millimeters. Now that rain has settled down a little bit, but as you can tell behind me, the wind just keeps going strong here. The good news is that Gabrielle is blowing out to sea and should be gone by sometime tonight.
And Susan, by the way, whatever became of that fishing stage?
Well, some good news. I just got off the phone with the folks down there. It's still hanging on. There's a crew down there. They've tied everything they could find to the stage, and so far so good, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, thanks very much. That's Susan Pedler reporting tonight. Well, the chaos in St. John's this morning meant the city had to fire up its emergency response plan once again. The team was just recovering from handling stranded airline passengers because of the problems in the United States. It was all systems standby at Central Fire Station. The Emergency Operations Center fielded calls from all over the city. The torrential rain meant a lot of headaches for residents, but only a few needed immediate emergency services.
There's concerns basically of basements flooding. There are a small number of people who are getting displaced as a result of this, and we're referring everyone who is displaced or needs some short-term immediate care through the Canadian Red Cross.
The Red Cross will respond to emergency situations 24 hours a day. The amount of flooding in St. John's is like no one has ever seen, and there are those who blame it on the city. They say the city has allowed development to destroy wetlands that used to absorb the runoff, and that's made the flooding worse. Glenn Payette has that story.
The story in St. John's today. Lakes where there shouldn't be lakes. Rivers where there shouldn't be rivers. and water flowing into John Gibson's house. It's on the shores of Quidi Vidi Lake. Gibson is a freshwater scientist. He says flooding in St. John's has gotten worse in the past few years, and he says it was predictable. And he has a specific target, the new Outer Ring Road above the city.
With the Outer Ring Road there, they've taken away most of the wetlands and, of course, paved it over. So instead of these wetlands acting as a sponge and holding and releasing it slowly, it's just going off the pavement.
And Gibson says the city knew it would happen. He says the city was told during its environmental impact hearings on the project.
Various groups, the Natural History Society being one, have warned the city about loss of wetlands and increase in flooding.
Gibson says other major developments have taken away marshland and topsoil that could absorb water. Away from Quidi Vidi on Porter Street, all of the houses have 4 or 5 feet of water in the basement. This house belongs to John Lane's daughter. She's away and hasn't seen the damage. Lane's an environmental biologist, and like Gibson, he blames poor planning for the destruction.
Under-designed infrastructure to take away the water. Probably the new road that's gone through have screwed up the hydrological regime of this area.
The city's engineering department was too busy today to respond to what Gibson and Lane had to say. But there are bound to be a lot of questions about whether the city's development plans have contributed to the damage. Glenn Payette, CBC News, St. John's.
And we'll be putting some of those questions to Mayor Andy Wells when he joins us live just a little later in the program.